Fool us once, shame on you. Fool us twice, shame on Bruce. The newest marketing manufactured MLS rivalry is finally here. San Jose Earthquakes versus Shower Drain FC. Excuse me, San Diego FC. My name is Kevin, I'm joined by Luis, and together we're the Quakesaholics. As you can probably tell by the tone, we're pretty damn disappointed with how this game went. There was a lot of promise, great energy from both fan bases, and the Sun games seemed to always deliver. But having basically thrown away the result from having led 1-0 to quickly being flipped to 2-1 in the closing moments in the game, it's hard to appreciate the few things that went well on the day. So, Luis, what are your thoughts on this match?
I don't think there was anyone that thought this was going to be an easy game going into it, but I think coming out of it, a lot of us, rightly so, feel very disappointed. I feel like early on we had a lot of the better chances. We had the better XG on the night. And honestly, yeah, up until around the 80th minute, everything was going really well. We got that goal, a little bit of a fluke, but honestly, in terms of how the game was going, I thought it was deserved. And it's just very unfortunate to lose in that way. I will say that we should have put this game away, honestly. In terms of the chances, I had a lot of shots. We had 16 shots to their 5. And I just felt like a lot of the times we didn't get the shot off fast enough, or maybe the chance came down to Victor Costa or Duan Jones, who you wouldn't expect to be as clinical. This is a game where if you don't convert your chances, the other team most often will. And in terms of the XG on target, they beat us in that bracket, which just goes to show that, yeah, we had good chances, but in terms of actually testing the goalkeeper, we were not good enough on the day. And then to add on to that, to have Bruce Arena make a double midfield substitution from Marc-Anthony Kaye, who was awarded after a great game against Vancouver, Bolaru, who also played, I think, 80 minutes against Vancouver. And honestly, I understand that this was a pretty intense game, but these players don't have to play any midweek games. They are still, I think, should be fresh off of the break that we had against Vancouver. So I don't really understand the argument there for subbing out Marc-Anthony Kaye and Bolaru, your entire midfield essentially, for fresh legs. Because yeah, maybe they do feel a little bit fresh, but it also takes you some time to get into the game. This was a very intense game. It was a game, of course, against one of the best teams in the league. So to come in especially for Noel Buck, to not to single him out, but someone who's not had enough playing time, maybe not for fault of his own, but just because of fitness or whatever it may be, I just don't think it was the right call. I don't understand. Marc-Anthony Kaye played a full 90. I thought he was doing well. I thought he was in the game. And to make those substitutions, yeah, okay. The pressing of the goalkeeper by Noel Buck is what created that our goal. But at the same time, I also think that's just kind of like a fluke instance. And it doesn't make up for the goals that we ended up conceding later on, where I personally do think that Noel Buck didn't cover himself in glory, and neither did Harks.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. There's a lot of moments of mismanagement, especially I think the one that is most obvious is the double substitution. The first one, just rewinding a little bit, starting 11, it was the same one as last week. That one, I think we both did agree that this was the best starting 11 to play this game. Both very happy that Marc-Anthony Kaye was rewarded with his great performance against Vancouver to start again over Harks. Romney and Muni, for what it's worth, I did think that they played a very good game. Muni is getting better and better every single match, really proving that he should be in this starting 11. We'll get into this. I think the way that the bench was formed was a little bit questionable, and then that maybe led into why some of these substitutions were also questionable. Noel Buck is someone that has been injured for, I don't know, many months at this point and hasn't had that much experience to begin with. So to see him be chosen to be subbed into this game, like you said, against such a difficult opponent and such an important game in terms of where we're at in the season, and every point is golden, and every opportunity that we throw away in this way is just another nail in the coffin for potentially not making the playoffs, which would be a complete failure if that does happen. To not see other names, maybe names that Quakes fans are more accustomed to, like Niko, like Jack Scahan, names that we've been missing all year round. I mean, you can go even further than that, like Pellegrino has just been absent, not even with the Town FC. Paul Marie has also been basically relegated to the Town FC. Yeah, some of this substitution and bench construction, I think, is where I'm starting to question it. I think this is the first time that, at least this season, I've thought, okay, Bruce definitely feels like he mismanaged this game in terms of substitutions. I think in terms of just like tactics, the Charlotte one is the most obvious example of that. And then beyond the midfield substitution, like we've already talked about, I also do think it was very questionable when we were already leading 1-0. Moments before the equalizer, we saw Preston Judd and Buddha with their jerseys already on. They're ready to get subbed in. We're already winning. We're playing against a super tough opponent, and the idea is to put in more attacking firepower. Um, I I don't understand that. And then the goal goes in. They equalize. The first thing I did was I looked back to Bruce, and he just kind of threw his hands up in the air, turns around, and basically just said, "You know what? F it. Just throw them in anyways." Because I mean, what were we gonna do then, right? And I look at the bench, and there wasn't any other midfielder that you could have thrown in there, but there were other defenders that you could have tried to fit in there to be more, more defensive minded. There's 15 minutes left in the game, 20 minutes left, plus stoppage time, I guess. So to your first idea when you're winning to be more attacking firepower, I just don't understand in what world does that make sense. And yeah, it's just the nail in the coffin. And we can't just throw in Preston Judd every game in the dying minutes and expect him to get goals. His form has been incredible. He's been having a really good season, but like we can't expect that.
Yeah, just all around, I think it was a bit, I don't know, just overly simplistic.
I mentioned player absences. As I was walking in through the stadium, I was walking over to my seats, and to my surprise, I walked right past Rodrigues, and I didn't talk to him or anything. He was walking by. There's too many people. I'm thinking about the game. I see him. I'm like, okay, whatever. He's not playing, I guess. But then I thought about it, and I looked at the player availability, and he isn't listed as injured. He's been gone for many games, and I just don't understand why Rodrigues is being left off. And we've talked about his mistakes, I mean, multiple times in different videos. But I think every center back on this team has had maybe not as many or as bad of mistakes, but they have had mistakes. And so to see him left off like that, on top of the rumors that he's potentially getting transferred, I don't think this looks good. I know you were talking about Niko as well. So yeah, what are your thoughts on some of these names that have been left off the team sheet?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned it earlier in the video too about Paul Marie, Jack Scahan, all names that we were pretty familiar with last season, and pretty big like fan admired players, I would say. I think to see Rodriguez off like that for 2 games in a row to not even make the bench, I think is a pretty clear indication that he's, I imagine, on his way out. And the same thing with Niko as well. I know he scored a goal for Town FC, good for him, but it is a regression. It just has to be said. I mean, this is a player that there were conversations about him being like the starting 8 for this team at the end of last season. And that's why he was getting played in that position a lot under Ian Russell. And I also think it complicates things a little bit more, talking about transfers. It wasn't too long ago where Niko Shakiris was being talked about for a move to Real Sociedad. Maybe the money wasn't there, which I also personally I can understand. I think it was about 1.5 million. I personally do think Niko, who has been really good, especially if he has a good number of MLS experience under his belt for someone of his age profile, and he's also been fantastic for his age group for in the national team as well. I understand wanting a bit more money, but for him to regress like that and not seeing a place for him to make minutes, I think that maybe it is time. If Bruce Arena just doesn't see anything in him, and it's gonna stifle his development even more, and I bet he's frustrated as well for game time. So, yeah, it's just not a good look. And yeah, throw Pellegrino in there as well, who's just been completely thrown out of the equation, out of the picture.
Yeah, and I think the transfer window is still open for a couple days. I think it's August 21st, if I remember correctly. So we could get news on this. There haven't been any more rumors, so I don't have reason to believe that any moves will be made, outgoing moves, anyways. But yeah, like if the plan is to just have Niko playing for the Town FC and like riding out his contract, this just screams the situation with Jackson Newell and Jeremy Mbobasi last season, where in the postseason we found out that there actually was interest for those two players, and we could have sold those two players in a time where we were basically confirmed to be last place. We were playing for literally nothing. We had interim coach, and we just let them ride out their contracts and then go as free agents. And I really hope that's not the case with someone like Niko, because that is a homegrown player. That is, like you said, someone that was very promising. I've had a lot of critiques of Niko. I don't think he's starting 11 caliber. I still don't think that he is. Honestly, he might even be a ways away from that, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean that he's not a very talented player and someone that has a lot of potential. And so to see him just walk away, it just feels bad. Feels really bad. A lot of doubts emerging from this game, and looking ahead and looking around us in the standings, it just feels even worse. We saw Colorado Rapids get a win this weekend, and that stretches their gap between us by 4 points. They're 4 points clear of us. RSL is below us by a point, but they do have a game in hand, so that's also pretty scary. And then looking like 3 positions above that, LAFC, Portland Timbers, Austin FC, they all have more points than us, and they have fewer games played. And so those teams, even though there's still 8 games left, after every match day, they just feel further and further out of reach. And it really does feel like at this point in the season, we're only playing for 9th at best. That is like the away playing spot for playoffs. That is where we end up. At glass half full, at least we've sort of technically, air quotes, made the playoffs. I don't consider the play-in game playoffs, but I guess on paper it is. But you think about this roster overhaul, you think about the stars that have emerged out of this team, Bruce Arena with the pedigree that he has, and to then say, okay, we made 9th place. Yes, that is a big upgrade from last season, but then I think back to like the 2023 team that also played 9th place. And then a couple of years back before that, I think it was like 2020 or 2021, also like away and playing seed. This team feels so much better than the other teams we've had. And so to see them only be able to reach that is just something went terribly wrong this season. I still think it's doable. I'm not trying to just be like straight negative, but yeah, after a game like this, we can't be making these kind of mistakes in August with only 8 games left.
Yeah, and that's why it just feels like such a missed opportunity to go into this game with nothing. The next couple games, yeah, there are some favorable games on the road, and compared to previous seasons especially, we have been a lot better on the road. But every game is a must-win game. I know there's a clip I saw recently just on the Instagram of Christian Espinosa doing like a pregame talk in the huddle, and he was just saying how like every game from here to the end of the season is a final. And I don't know though. I just sometimes I feel like the on the field those stakes don't translate very well. It doesn't feel like that sometimes, but it is. And if this team is serious about wanting to make the playoffs, then yeah, they're just gonna have to, really pull something off in these final games. It is still possible, of course. You look at Colorado Rapids, there is like a 4 point gap, and it is possible, but it's not going to be easy, and it's almost certainly going to come down to the final day if we do have a chance of making these playoffs, even for a play-in spot.
One of the things that we forgot to talk about actually is man of the match. I feel like we usually get to that. My on the field answer for that, I think I would go Daniel Muni. I thought he played a very good game, but my true answer, my answer for my heart, I do want to give a huge shout out to the supporter groups. I think there was, at least maybe it was just in my head, but I think back to like the first LAFC game that we had at PayPal and how many fans traveled for that. You see that happen for, teams that are in their first year. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of investment. And we've seen San Diego travel pretty well at LA games. I was surprised with how many people they brought, to be honest, for like a Sunday game. It's a long drive back, a long flight back. But to see Seismic Union, the way that they showed up, the Ultras too, like you looked at the north and the south end, it's been a long time since it really felt packed, like truly, truly packed on both sides. And I think that this was another game that, although on field we didn't get the job done, which is, the most important part, some would argue, I do think that off field, the fans really did show up. The stadium felt packed. Crazy George was back. At no point did I hear either supporter groups stop singing. And I think that is the only positive I take away from the day. There's always pride in that. Anyways, can't change what's in the past, and the road ahead is difficult. Up next, the Quakes play on the road in Houston, and then again on the road against Austin, I believe. So it's going to be a while until we see them again in person, but the good thing is that we will be playing at Levi's, which historically has treated us very well. That'll be a very big matchup against LAFC. By that point in the season, every game will truly be a final if this form continues the way it has been. So hopefully we get to see some of that Levi's magic, and we'll be here to cover it. So if you made it this far, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.